What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Check the Kick. Sherdog.com is a website. I'm the host, Devin. Special guest with me today. He is right here. Dayne Fox, thanks for joining me again. How are you doing, buddy?
I am happy to be here as always. Always delighted to talk about some face punchies.
Face punching is one of my favorite things, fishing and face punching, but we're here to talk about face punching today. UFC France at the Honda Accord, the Accor Arena. I was just, anytime I'd see Accor, I'd think of Honda Accord. Pretty good, pretty decent card. We got a pay-per-view in Salt Lake City, right in your backyard this weekend. So you're the guy for the show. And then we're going to talk about the future of women's bantamweight in the middle section of the show. We're going to get right into it. Let's talk about the guy who stole the show this weekend. My guy, I don't know if he's your guy, but I like him. I think he's pretty good. Bryan Battle knocks out Juice, TKOs him, gives the birds to the French crowd, and says, I'm not going to lose a fist fight to a French guy in France. The translator wouldn't translate it, but I heard what he said. What did you think about his performance? And then tell me what you thought about his wonderful speech in the octagon after his win.
So before I get to his performance, I got to talk about the fact that it's been a hell of a metamorphosis because, when he first gets into the UFC, he's fairly humble, kind of a fun-loving guy, it seems. I don't know where this intensity has come from, but I like it. And Battle is he's far exceeded my expectations. I figured that he would be somebody who'd probably make the fringe of the top 15 of middleweight or welterweight, wherever he decided to stay. But he's already there at this point, and he's looking incredible. He's got an attitude about him that we really got a feel for with when he, let's face it, he was going to beat Angelusa before that fight started or stopped due to a no contest. But yeah, and he was Giuseppe was a step up from Lusa, and he took the fight right to him. Just got right up in his face, used his speed, kept throwing the jab right into him, and slowly but surely just weared down Giuseppe. And that's saying something because Giuseppe's a prospect that I like as well. This version of Battle, I did not see this coming when he first won tough, but I like it. He's entertaining as hell. And if he just wants to go into everybody's backyard and wreck their plans, whatever, I'm great with it. I like this guy.
I think he is too. I think he would be great just showing up to these people's backyards and getting up in there and doing some work, pissing off the crowd. I think it's good for his ego. He seems to be a guy that fights really well with the chip on his shoulder. Mm-hmm. I appreciate him having the chip on his shoulder, and moments like this kind of just, put gas on the fire, per se. He fights really smart, and he's one of those kind of fearless dudes. He has a little bit of that hobo cop in him. And if you go and look at this dude's record from tough, he submitted Andre Petrosky, who's a guy up a weight class that's effing huge. He did win at middleweight, and he was, even on tough, he was kind of, like Connor calls Nate, he's kind of skinny fat, coming through tough. And then he looks freaking shredded now. He's big for the division. Juice is one of the bigger welterweights. And Bryan Battle's just ability to stay comfortable and diligent in the pocket. He's rolling with shots, blocking shots, and sniping Juice with clean punches in between Juice's punches. Really slick in the pocket. The commentary on this fight was absolutely terrible, by the way. It's almost like the UFC was in their ear. The truck was like, hey, root for the French guy. They're like, Juice seems to be the harder puncher. And it's like, yeah, he might be, but he's getting outlanded 6-1. He throws one strike and Bryan Battle's hand speed, he's lacing him up. The shots around the guard, he was throwing clean shots straight down the pike, and then he'd loop one around Juice's guard, and that's what kind of started the started the TKO stoppage. Jusei didn't go down, but like Dean only saved him. He was getting teed off on. This is actually I thought it was a good stoppage. I didn't hear anybody complaining about the stoppage. Usually stoppages like this, people are kind of kicking and screaming a little bit. This one, I had no complaints with the stoppage. I loved his ability to stay strong in the clinch with Jusei. He knows that he was a judo guy. He's like, look, I'm going to just go out here and do everything better than Jusei. There was no moment that, Jusei landed some nice jabs, and he landed some nice shots on Battle that did cause him to reset, but Battle just seemed to outperform him in every aspect of this fight. I've been a guy that's been impressed by him. And I think after that Rinat Fakhretdinov loss, he's kind of realized, like, I do need to be mean. Like, I can't.
He got pissed off after that fight. I remember watching that fight, and you could see the frustration in his face with it. He knew that he was getting ragdolled, and you know, a lot of times guys either kind of take a loss like that, go and sulk, lick their wounds, and don't really learn from it. But shit, Battle learned every lesson that he possibly can learn from that. And yeah, I couldn't have put it better. Like you said, he realized I need to develop a mean streak. And the funny thing about it is he's kind of taken it to an extreme. Again, for some that works, for some that's a bad thing. It seems to work for him. I think that if he can maintain this type of attitude, that can be a real weapon against opponents, because you know these guys are professional fighters. They're some of the best in the world at what they do, and they're not used to guys not being afraid of whatever it is that they can throw back at them. And a Battle can walk into a fight and definitively let them know, I'm not going to be afraid of whatever it is that you're going to throw at me. He could win a big part of the mental battle right there, even before they've stepped into the cage.
Totally. And then you just parlay that with the fact that he's like getting to be a really confident striker and boxer in the pocket. And like, yeah, confidence is one thing, but like actually getting more technical and slick, pair that with the confidence. And, you know, I'm not going to say his boxing is like Ilia Topuria, but that's how Ilia got to his level. He remained diligent, stayed schooled, stayed practiced, and got better in between fights. And that's the road that we're seeing, you know, battle take. And there's a clip going around last week prior to this fight of him in his very first MMA fight at heavyweight. Got head kicked and got knocked right out. Did you see that one that was going around?
I heard about it, but I didn't see that one.
Yeah, he's Bryan Battle. He's 6'2", but he looks terribly out of shape. And in his very first professional MMA fight, and he gets head kicked, knocked out, flatlined. Not many dudes are going to go and try some. I mean, imagine just failing that bad on your first day of work. Not many dudes show up for the second day. Not many dudes show up for the second day, the third day, the fourth day, and become, you know, manager, for example. And that's kind of what he's done. Like he was knocked out in his very first pro fight, and he's built his way back up through the Ultimate Fighter, back in the UFC. I think he's on his second contract now, but maybe not, because I know those tough contracts are really like, aren't they like 10 or 12 fight deals? They're kind of extremely with small incremental rises. They're pretty shitty. So hopefully he's able to renegotiate. He's on a hell of a streak. You know, with what he's done on the Ultimate Fighter up to now, the only loss is Rinat Fakhretdinov, and then he has the no contest against Angelusa. But every single person that's probably listening to this show, unless you're some sort of curmudgeon, you probably call that a win.
Absolutely.
I mean, to me, that doesn't look like a loss. When I look at his record and I see the no contest and I think about the Angelusa fight, like, oh no, that's a guy that got eye poked and then said he couldn't continue, but then wanted to fight you after the fight was over. I remember that part pretty clearly. Battle looks great though. Like, I'm super hyped on this dude. He's still young. He's getting better. He's in the perfect division to make a slow and steady climb. And if he's wise and his management's wise, that's what I think he should do. Just, you know, do not throw this guy into the top 10 at welterweight. Would he fight Gilbert Burns tomorrow if you let him? I bet. Would he fight Vicente Luque tomorrow if you let him? I bet. Do I think he needs another one or two fights before he fights those guys? Probably not. I think he could go in there and potentially win one of those fights. But I think for his improvement and the rest of his future, I think he should totally take on another maybe 2 or 3 dudes before he starts looking at the top 10 or top 15. What do you think? Who do you think he should fight next?
So technically the person that I'm thinking would be ideal for him is in the top 15, but I don't think that the UFC should have him in the top 15. Neil Magny. And the main reason I say that is Magny doesn't go away. Even when he's getting his ass whooped, he's still there. And if you don't put him away, he will be there till the end. Just ask Mike Malott about that. And I think that type of opponent is good for a young guy like Battle, who, he's gaining experience, but if we're being honest, he's still relatively inexperienced. He had 3 or 4 fights before going into the Tough House. He didn't have a lot of experience, so he's still learning on the job. And yeah, I think Magny's the ideal opponent for him going forward.
And I like that. Magny is, he's a gatekeeper. Like that's where he's at right now. I don't want to be disrespectful towards Neil Magny, but I think he also realizes that he's coming off of a pretty violent loss against a young up and coming guy. Michael Morales kind of did him pretty dirty. So, and giving him someone like Bryan Battle is, he seems so unassuming, a guy like Bryan Battle, but to people like me and you and people that are probably listening to the show, they understand, how good he is. I think the perfect test for him next would be like someone like Kelvin Gastelum. That one step before Neil Magny and like Randy Brown, give him someone like Kelvin Gastelum. He's got the name, and Kelvin Gastelum can still do things in a fight to prove a point that we may not see yet. If something does need to be proven about Bryan Battle in maybe a negative way, and if he goes out there and storms his castle the same way he's been doing, then he is proved to me and everyone else that he's ready for that top 15. Juice, for his comeback, he'll come back from this. Like, he can fight anyone.
Yeah. Let's see. I
didn't.
On my list, I had him fighting Phil Rowe next. So, not a huge name, but I think that it would be kind of fun to see 2 big, tall guys go at it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And there's a million welterweights, and like outside of like Tim Means, he's fighting this weekend. Court McGee.
Yes, he is.
Like he can fight the winner of that fight.
Yeah.
If that person doesn't retire. Court McGee's gonna retire. We're not gonna talk about Court McGee.
I hope so. Court's one of the all-time good guys, but please, Court, don't beat yourself up anymore. We love you, buddy. Hopefully you get a win, but yeah.
And I'm glad it's Tim Means. We'll just, that's the perfect fight for both guys.
Yeah, because even if Court doesn't win, I'm not going to be mad to see Tim Means win. So,
totally, I 100% agree. Moving on to the next fight. This was the co-main event from UFC France. We had Brendan Allen taking on Nassourdine Imavov. Nassourdine Imavov won via 29-28 decision on all 3 judges' scorecards. I don't want to say by the skin of his teeth, but the second and third round kind of made it look like Imavov could probably win this fight again a little bit easier. And Allen, we'll get into the X's and O's, and I'm just trying to find the best way to say this. I was never that high personally on Brendan Allen. I
get that.
I was never fully convinced, and this was kind of like the reason why. And now I'm just like, it's going to take something. It's going to take a miracle for me to be sold on him. Probably not for others. I also just have people that I like. I don't want to say don't like, but people that I'm just like lukewarm about. And then I also kind of feel the same about Imavov, but Imavov did look pretty good here. He gave up that first round takedown. Like, our colleague Ben said something in the Sherdog Slack, and he's like, Imavov's not going to be allowed back in Russia with this wrestling. And then all of a sudden, the second round starts, and he's just like down blocking and stuffing takedowns and sprawling like a magician. I don't know what happened in between the first and second round for Imavov, but like he started to sprawl Brendan Allen's takedowns, and then he took them down himself and did way more damage with ground and pound. What do you think? And I hate to harp on the loser more than the winner, but what do you think about Brendan Allen's approach? He's been pretty vocal about wanting to fight for a title, been pretty vocal about bashing the current champion of this division. Where does this put him after this performance? What does he got to do next to put himself? I don't think he was ever in contention. He thought he was in, but what does he have to do to get back there? What does he have to do to get there at all?
Okay, so he needed to win this fight if he was going to be in contention. So that didn't happen. But in his next fight, he's got to show up. I hate to say it, but he really didn't. I don't know if he got his bell rung early in the second round or something like that, because the first round was terrible. He got an early takedown, looked good with that, but he just held Imavov down from there. He didn't really do anything significant to improve his position. He didn't really deliver any damage. Didn't seek out a submission. Yeah, they should have. But the second round starts, and Imavov starts getting the advantage on the feet. And from there, Allen just constantly shooting for takedowns that just look sloppy as hell, despite what Michael Bisping will tell you.
He was on one. All three of them. Even Felder, man. And Felder's usually like him and Sanko are like ace in the hole commentary. Like those two and Anik are like, for me, I think the best three. And even Felder, I don't know, he was too persuaded by the tea and crumpets or something.
Yeah, not just Allen needed to show up, and he didn't. So if he can do that in his next fight, if he can, even if he loses his next fight, but he puts on a performance, I was like, you know what, that might be a $50K fight of the night. Okay, he's back in good graces as far as I'm concerned, but that was terrible. That was a stinker. And yeah, the thing that I agree with you about Allen, though, you were saying that you didn't believe in him. The best win in his win streak was Chris Curtis, and it was kind of really a little bit of luck. Yeah, no, I was going to say there was a lot of luck there that allowed him to win, because with about 15 seconds left in that fight, I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, Curtis has this in the bag. And then Curtis, I believe it was his hamstring or something that blew out.
Mm-hmm. He had like a leg injury, knee injury.
Yep. Allen stole it in those last 15 seconds.
He even kind of screamed when he went down, which really, you start vocalizing in there and the judges hear it. And I don't remember if it was like in the apex, they're definitely going to hear it.
Yes. It's just, as much as I like Curtis, he's somewhere in the top 10 and top 15, and sure. So to be claiming that he deserves a title shot after a winner like that, no, man, you got to get a win over somebody in the top 10.
Chris Curtis came in on short notice too.
Yeah, that's what makes it even worse, And again, I'm not trying to crap on his winning streak. You beat who's put in front of you, but unfortunately for Allen, he had a very deliberate climb, and if you're not beating names that matter, you're not going to be getting the title shot. You need to have a little bit more of a steep incline once you get to that point. And again, I'm not saying it's his fault, but he didn't have any real name value behind that win streak to be calling for a title shot. So had he beat Imavov, I wouldn't have had a problem with him challenging Dreykus next, because I kind of like the idea of a new face challenging for the title at this point. So had he done that, I would have said, okay, if he's won this many in a row, Imavov's a genuine top 5. Let's see what he can do. But he didn't show up.
Allen he won the first round cleanly, but then it was almost, he puts on this bravado. He puts does the handgun thing. If you're listening to this with audio, I'm covering my face and doing a handgun symbol. Like at weigh-ins, he seems to exude this confidence, but it wasn't even like a deflating balloon. His balloon just seemed to pop in there. The takedowns were just not set up, extremely desperate. And what's weird is like, this is the one thing I agreed with Bisping. Bisping was like, dude, F it. You need to win this fight. You need to just let your strikes go. In the third round, he landed two really nice knees on Imavov, and like he was having success. Imavov won this fight, but like he also didn't give himself the best opportunities to win. He didn't have the fight IQ to say, well, shit. I mean, I've ran through my plan A. Plan A is no longer working. We need to pivot to plan B. He just wasn't even willing to do that. Like the grappling didn't work, and that was like the only fight he was willing to have. He wanted this to be a 5-round fight, and he was like dying at the end of the third round. Like he's just got to go back. He's still young. He's had so many fights. Like if you go look at Brendan Allen's record, like he also has fought a lot of solid dudes, even pre-UFC, you know, and other organizations. He's got a lot of solid wins on his record. So he overall, yes, he is a good fighter. Compared, he's top 15 in his weight class. Yes, he's at middleweight. He's still a good fighter, but I definitely think if he wants to take that next level, he's got to get confident with his B game. For Imavov looked fine, but he also looked super gassed at the end of the third round. So I don't know. When I look at this, I think about Dricus du Plessis, and I'm like, what is Dricus good at? Kind of nothing and everything, but his best thing is his stick-to-itiveness. And like, if you're huffing and puffing like that at the start of the fourth round, and you got Dricus du Plessis in front of you, I can tell you one thing: if you're tired and Dricus is in front of you, that's when you get finished by him. He will if you've got your door cracked open this much, he's kicking that MFer in, and he's taking everything. And that's kind of what I thought about when I saw them. Both of them want title fights, and I'm like, Dricus just won his fight via fourth round club and sub. How is this going to look for them fighting a guy like Dricus?
That I get what you're saying there, and I do believe that Dricus has continually improved. You know, because I remember when he first came into the UFC, I thought, okay, this guy looks like he could be fun, but he's got so many flipping holes. He's completely unorthodox, and typically they figure you out before you figure them out if you're unorthodox. You know, sooner or later, that's what happens. But with Dricus, that hasn't been the case. He's just got something about him, like an opportunistic instinct that he has been able to extend to the point where he is the champion, and well deserved as the champion. Because, I mean, like you said, what does he do exceptionally well? Not really anything. And so I know that you're going to disagree with me, but I kind of played my hand a little bit earlier when I said that I kind of want to see a new face within the division. So I'm actually okay with giving Imavov the title shot at this point. For two reasons.
Sure.
We've got Whitaker and Chimaev coming up. If Whitaker wins, he's already lost to du Plessis. So I'm of the opinion, okay, unless there's not another option, I'd kind of rather see somebody other than Whitaker. But if Chimaev wins, the problem with him is this would be what, his third fight in 3 years, fourth fight in 4 years, something like that. You know, if I'm the UFC, I'm like, okay, if you can fight within the next 6 or 7 months, win that fight, we'll grant you the title shot. But the problem is at this point, he's a part-time fighter. I don't think the UFC can trust him to be the champion if he can only fight once a year.
Not on US soil.
Yeah.
Just bringing Fight Island back, baby. Hamzat's champion. I look, it's men's middleweight. It's literally just like men's light heavyweight. Like those are the type of title fights that I'm okay with seeing. Like
Imavov and Dricus are about as middleweight as it gets too.
Oh, look, you remove the names and it's just two warm bodies having a throwdown. Like that's gonna be a fun fight because like Imavov. One thing I will give Imavov is like he sends it. Like he is willing to get down and fight. Like he's He's a crisp and clean striker. He did well in this fight. Like, his striking looked good. He teed off on Brendan Allen. He landed the better shot. He had the faster hands. And he was the one that was able to get absolutely dominated for one round, be held down, gassed out. He came back and won the last 2 rounds. Good. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do. And that's what champions do. They make adjustments.
He's got some dog in him.
So he has that dog in him. And honestly, like, and I'm not here to shit on him or his camp, but like, I don't even love Ferdinand Lopez as a coach. Like, I think Imavov could, and I think he might have left, but if not, like, there's other gyms out there where, like, you show up to Extreme Couture. Look what Francis did when he left that camp.
Yes.
And moved to Vegas.
Yeah.
Outside of the Anthony Joshua thing, I don't think Imavov is going to fight someone like Beterbiev or something like that. So, yeah, great win for Imavov. You want him fighting Dricus. I think he just needs one more in there based on, if Khamzat wins, dude, what happened when Khabib said he was going to retire? How many times did Dana take him out for dinner?
That's true.
Dana seems to really want Khamzat to be fighting for a UFC title. And certain things he could be like a dog on a bone. So I think if Khamzat wins, UFC will, I don't know, buy a barge and have that dude fight on a barge. They're going to do whatever the hell they can to make Khamzat fight for a UFC title.
UFC cruise ship. No.
Yeah, right. UFC freight. I don't know. It'll be like one of those Russian fight circus things where they're like on that container fighting over a pond. Have you seen those videos? Like
yes.
A suspended container. Yeah, let's just get you knocked out and hold you 20 feet above a small pond. Like, that's real. It's real freaking brilliant.
Yeah.
All around a pretty decent fight, but if you had any hopes for Brendan Allen, this probably was a little bit of a dagger to the heart. And then Imavov showed up and did what he was supposed to do. So if you like Imavov, he just added another little badge to his vest and got another dub, and he's moving forward. Moving on to the main event from UFC fronts, we had Renato Canero versus Benoit Saint Denis. Benoit Saint Denis survived what is one of the closest 10-7 scorecards that I would probably want to score out there. To come back and win the second round, however, it still was not enough. After losing a fight against a guy that looked like he had a hammer, cage side doctor came in, looked at him, said, "How many fingers am I holding up?" He guessed. But it got to the point where the doctor was like, "Dude, you can't see." Stop the fight, TKO, doctor stoppage after the second round. The French commission gave Benoit the opportunity to finish the fight in the second round because that was all he had. His corner should have probably even told him, like, "Hey, dude, they're letting this fight go on. You need to finish him now because you're effed." But Moicano, man, took advantage of Benoit Saint Denis' signature move, that left body kick, took him down, took his back, controlled him. And just, I mean, Brendan Allen, if you listen to Check the Kick, what Renato Moicano did in the first round to Saint Denis is what you got to do to dudes when you take them down like that in the first round. I am a guy that had not been hyped on Moicano, how everybody was kind of getting hyped on Brendan Allen. It's kind of lukewarm on Moicano, but he's proving me wrong. So I love when this happens. I love when I'm proved wrong by guys. He's looking pretty fucking good. He's looking pretty fucking dangerous. Tell me what you think about Moicano's performance, what he did well. Outside of his time on the mic, I think he looks great, man.
Well, the other thing that makes it more impressive, did you see that x-ray going around where he...
oh my God, yeah. His shoulder was like... so. I'm telling... And I can... If you listen to my show about maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, I tore up my rotator cuff and had to like go to the emergency room and get a Toradol shot in my ass. I'll tell you right now, I don't know how the hell Moicano showed up for a fucking fist fight like that, because I couldn't even take my shower off the wall. Like it couldn't do a damn thing. Moicano's awesome. Like, he's looking great.
And the thing that's funny is I remember that some people thought that he was soft, back when he was still at featherweight. Winning a fight in the manner that he did with a broken bone like that, dude, Money Moicano is not soft at all. That guy's a tough son bitch. I don't know exactly what it was. The first time that I really remember seeing Money Moicano come out was when he took that fight against Rafael dos Anjos on like 4 days' notice, something like that.
And he got the shit beat out of him.
Yes.
And came back and won the 5th round.
Yeah. Yeah. But he's had an attitude about him that was not present before. He started his podcast, and it just, to quote Spinal Tap, he's turned it up to 11. But damn it, if it isn't entertaining, and if it hasn't made him a better fighter, amazingly enough, he's just got this confidence about him that wasn't there before, and the reason why it's been able to work for him. Because I think you can tell if I don't regularly listen to his podcast. I've heard clips, and it has nothing to do with the fact that I don't think that he's not worth listening to. It's the fact that there's so damn many out there, and there's only so many hours in the day to listen to the worthwhile MMA content.
You're listening to Check the Kick instead.
Yeah, damn straight. But he's a smart guy. He can identify a lot of chinks in the armor, and he knows how to exploit it. Because that's exactly what he did with Denis. Got that kick immediately. He knew it was going to come at some point. As soon as he got it, he got the takedown and just swarmed him. He did so much to him on the ground. The elbows, everything. I don't want to get into too many X's and O's, but he was just swarm is the appropriate word.
So let me ask you a question. Outside of the champ, like, who is the second best control, submission, ground and pound wrestler at men's lightweight?
Ooh.
Like, Charles Oliveira is violent. Charles Oliveira is like the king of club and sub. And he looked good against Dariush, he looked good against Tony, but like, I can't recall him like taking someone down and like
not like that.
Like, Moicano beat the fuck out of like the elbows, the violence, the control. BSD is a really good grappler and really strong. He did look a little bit skinnier coming into this fight week. I don't know if he had staph with the Dustin Poirier thing, but like against Matt Frivola, which he got knocked out, highlighted like freaking Faraz Ziam, literally put him on the Sherdog 2024 knockout of the year. But like, he gets those butterfly hooks, and he's usually able to get, like, the second Moicano got him down, he got his butterfly hooks in, and he's trying to manipulate the guard and get an escape and get to a hip. And he's usually good at that. Mm-hmm. Not against Moicano. Khabib-esque violence with the ground and pound. And if you can take people down and not let them do anything and just literally beat the shit out of them the way Moicano did, tactfully and technically, it's going to be a problem for a lot of dudes.
Yeah. And we've ripped on the commentary a little bit here and there, but Bisping was spot on the money when he was like, when he was saying that Moicano knew that the butterfly guard was coming from Denis, because he handled it perfectly. I'm trying to think. He floated over every. He just floated over every attempt that Denis had to escape. Floated over. Okay, you're not going to go this way. You're not going to go this way. Just whatever he did, Moicano was ready for it, and not only was he ready for it, but he was ready to just deliver out that punishment. You said it at the beginning of the segment. It was a borderline 10-7, and again, credit to the commentary, because Bisping said that as well. He's like, that might have been a 10-7.
And I know that's like, that's egregious. You want to say 10? Well, the last 10-7 I can think of that I know for a fact happened was when Ilia Topuria fought Josh Emmett. There was 1-10-7 scored in that fight. And like, this is one where like clear, I even put it into the Sherdog site, and I don't want to manipulate the scorers in there. I was not doing live scoring. Sometimes I do the live scoring, just depends on when I'm called to do so. but this time I wasn't scoring it, but I put into the Sherdog Slack, like Ray Charles could have seen that was a 10-8 round. Like it just,
Oh yeah,
obviously 10-8. I haven't seen the scorecard, but I would just like to assume I'm going to operate on good faith that all the judges scored that at 10-8.
agreed.
It was just purely violent. The control plus the damage, you just don't see that very often. You see that when there's a guy like, you know, when Khamzat Chimaev was fighting dudes like way below his skill level, he was doing that to dudes. But like, you don't see many people doing that, like in title eliminator, top 10, top 15 type fights. Like usually those are pretty even fights. And Moicano was an underdog here. He's been the underdog in his last, you know, he's been underdog in his last several fights. And he's on, I mean, 4-fight win streak. Brad Riddell, rear naked choke. The Drew Dober fight, you know, got hurt in that Drew Dober fight and came back and hung tough and did well. Finished, I mean, he's got 2 TKOs in a row against Jalen Turner and fucking Benoit Saint Denis. Like the dude is fighting really well, overperforming. With the shoulder injury, he's turned a corner mentally. He seemed to turn a corner, you know, not just mentally with the attitude of like the can-do attitude, but also like he's getting better at fighting. His striking has come a long way.
Yeah,
that's always going to be a place to expose him. Benoit Saint Denis did win the second round, but I do think Moicano probably was just taking it off. Like, I almost killed this dude. Let me, you know, take this off. And it didn't matter because he did so much damage. Like, if the roles were reversed, they would have stopped the fight.
Agreed. They wanted to give the homeboy a chance to send the crowd home happy, but yeah, that wasn't happening.
Same thing as the Aldana fight with Dumont. They were gonna let
100%.
Aldo finish that fight regardless. Like, are you gonna die? No. Okay, we're gonna let you finish this fight. Moicano looked awesome. Saint Denis, I feel bad for him because he's lost 2 fights in a row. He had a crazy stat, and I'm not a huge X's and O's stat guy because stats actually don't matter in MMA when it comes to scoring the fight and outcome statistics, and because the judges don't get it. So I'm not gonna ever judge a fight on stats. But the commentary said that he had the highest significant strike differential currently in men's lightweight. I think that's going to be changed probably after this.
Just a little bit.
But it's crazy because like he has the highest difference in, you know, the striking differential. However, look at all the punishment he's taken in his losses. Think about his UFC debut.
Oh yeah, that was one of the all-time beatdowns. Zaleski dos Santos. Yeah, that was
easy.
Bad.
Dos Santos beat Capoeira beat the shit out of him. Dustin Poirier knocked him dead. And I was having a conversation with my buddy, and I do kind of think in that Dustin Poirier fight that Dustin Poirier was really trying to win a fight by guillotine. And then once he realized that wasn't going to happen, he was just like, I'm going to go out there and actually just punch this dude now. And the second he did, he knocked him out. I really do think Dustin Poirier was trying to win a fight via guillotine. BSD needs some build back. He needs to go back, and, you know, we talked about people changing camps, and even off of a win, I was like, Imavov may look better if he left. I think BSD might need to. And Aldo Moicano invited
Moicano offered to have him come with him to ATT. I think that he should. Absolutely.
Because he's got all the skills. He's only been like a pro fighter for like 5 years. Like, he hasn't been a pro fighter for long as hell. He's under 30. He's got all the skills. He's an athletic freak. Who do you think he should fight next? What is BSD's next move? Do you think he should just get back in there once he's healed up? Do you think he needs to take some time?
He should definitely take some time. The problem is, like, I feel like they're kind of doing the same thing with him that they did with Edmund Shabazian. Like, they rushed him up there so quick after just a rush of success that they threw him in there, gave him too much too fast. And the problem is scaling it back. Well, okay, how much do we scale it back? We don't know quite yet. So it definitely needs to be somebody who has some name value, because I think Saint Denis has proven that he deserves at least that much. But so the name that I have is actually Keen Green. Somebody that can actually push him, somebody that isn't going to be a gimme. but somebody that I look at and I think, yeah, Denis should win that.
I've got I looked at Bobby Green and I was like, that makes sense. But I think they'll probably give Bobby Green, I don't want to say an easier fight, but he seems to be on the tail end of his career. I went with Grant Dawson. I would love to see if he can go back to the drawing board and fight another dude that's got a heavy grappling game, to see if he can go make that adjustment. Because if he can't beat Grant Dawson's good. He's got a good record, but if you're not beating guys like him, you're definitely not championship level. And he's fighting. He was a contender. He was on that type of path, and I think that's where he wants to be. Moicano. He's got some big names on his mind. Who do you think he fights next, and what do you want to see him? Who do you want to see him fight?
Give him what he wants. Give him what he wants. He says he wants
Sure.
Paddy Pimblett. Pimblett says that he's down with that. And here's the way that I look at it. You got two loudmouths that sure as hell know how to promote a fight. Why not let them build each other up, as they trash talk each other leading into it, and just make a spectacle of it. It would easily be able to headline a fight night if they want to do that. Or even though it isn't your traditional co-main event for a pay-per-view, it doesn't quite have the same. I
think in the O2
not like
arena,
a title contender or anything, but yeah,
I think overseas,
something like that easily. So I think that it's something that they should do. I see no reason why not. It would be a hell of a fun grappling fight. And yeah, like I said, I just think the hype between the two would be so much fun as they build it up. So I say give him what he wants.
He's in a tough spot because he has all of the ability to call out. He deserves a fight with someone like Justin Gaethje or Dan Hooker, one of those dudes, top 6 or 7 in the world that have fought for titles or are title challengers, or Dan Hooker hasn't fought for a title, but he's top 5. I consider anyone in that region a potential title challenger, and I totally think he deserves a fight with either one of those guys. But he's in a no lose situation because he could have already, with a loss here, he honestly, off of a loss, I feel like he had a better opportunity to fight Paddy Pimblett, because Paddy Pimblett would have been a little bit more willing to fight him had he went out there and kind of got embarrassed. Paddy Pimblett might not be picking up the phone for Renato Moicano anymore after this weekend. He might look at that and go, fuck, he just sounded crazy on the microphone. I thought he was stupid, but maybe he's not, like if you only heard Renato Moicano's post-fight speeches, you might not think too highly of him. But if you only watched his in-fight cage tape, you'd be like, this dude's a killer. I would love to see him fight Justin Gaethje.
That's actually my number 2. I had that penciled in for a little bit, but I'm like, you know what? Screw it. Give him what he wants. But yeah, if he fights Gaethje next, I have zero problem with that.
It's the same thing. It could also totally be, and honestly, men's lightweight is so high profile that like anyone in the top 7, if they just pair them up against each other, like it can totally be a co-main event. Like, would you be more hyped for Juliana Pena versus Raquel Pennington or Justin Gaethje Moicano?
Gaethje Moicano, easy.
Like as a co-main event, you're not selling wolf tickets. That's a fucking brawl. And I appreciate Moicano's willingness to show up for a scrap. And Saint Denis as well. Really cool fight from both of these guys. Saint Denis, he's so damn tough. He's like almost unkillable. I want to see him go back and get better. We already know his toughness is there. And Moicano too, man. Both guys look awesome, and shout out to them. What did you give this card as a letter grade really quick before we move on?
There were some stinkers, but I was in the neighborhood of about a B- or so, because I felt like the main event delivered, the co-main event, but at the same time the fights before that with Bryan Battle and Joe Anderson Brito, those fights I thought were solid enough that B- sounds about right.
I'd be right there, B-, C+. And soon enough, we'll be back at the Accor Arena. However, we're going to be moving on to the middle segment of the show, What's Hot, and we'll be right back. Moving on to the middle segment of the show, What's Hot. Was going to do a little bit of talking about Dana White and boxing, but I did that before and he burned me because it hasn't happened yet. So we are going to talk about something that is happening. There are two big women's bantamweight fights on the card this weekend. And we had a pretty good one on the last pay-per-view event, last numbered event. We're going to talk about the future of women's bantamweight. If there's a future, what we think it may look like. Will this division continue to be, I don't want to say continue to be successful. Will it become more successful? Will it prosper? Will it develop into something big? Will it become like women's strawweight? Tell me what you think about the upcoming title fight, what it means for the winners after, and what you think about this division just in general moving forward.
The title fight, kudos to the UFC for trying to build it up, because they're trying to make it all about the tough house drama from over a decade ago between the two. But
I think it's like 12 or some shit. Like, you were mean to me 12 years ago.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I don't care. Kudos to Rocky Pennington, because she has fought and clawed and scratched her way up to being the champion. I will never take that away from her. But does she get me excited? Am I always like, oh, hell yeah, a Rocky Pennington fight? No disrespect, but no. And if I'm being honest, Juliana Pena doesn't do much for me either. I will admit that I think Pena is probably overall a more fun fighter to watch, because there tends to be a lot more swings of momentum within her fight. But she also tends to be so flippin' annoying that it's hard for me to root for her sometimes. I think you totally get what I'm saying. She's a little bit much with her trash talk, but it's not a fight that I have a hell of a lot of excitement for, but it's there. If I'm going to make a prediction for it, I'm going to say that I think that Rocky pulls it out, largely because at this point, both of them are kind of overachievers. But I think Pena has lost a step. She's had so many injuries and wear and tear that the athletic advantage that she had back in the day over her, I don't think exists anymore. And I think that Pennington has continued to improve, and Pena is, she pulled out that upset over Nunez, and all the more credit to her, but Matt Serra beat GSP as well. So
this fight, we are talking about it a little bit with the future of the women's bantamweight division. That's kind of how little I care about it, because I'm looking into brighter futures. I'm looking what's past this fight.
You got a point there.
I do think Pennington can win this, but I think the UFC is on their knees praying
they want Pena,
that Juliana Pena wins this fight. Number one, she's been a champion before. She has that win over an Amanda Nunes, and they're even playing clips of it. I went back and watched that fight again. Matt Serra did beat GSP, but he kind of he knocked him out unexpectedly, and that was like 1 out of 100 chances of probably ever happening if they ran that back 100 times. Watching the Pena versus Nunes fight, in their first fight, Amanda Nunes was like, "You have a jab and you're not dead yet."
She disrespected her, and she paid the price. Yeah.
Kind of showed the strength of that division at that time. However, the top contenders, we got women like Holly Holm that are there, that are kind of, she signed a new deal, even though she's like in her early 40s. But in this division, I don't know if it matters as much. It's kind of like heavyweight in that way.
Yeah.
And then there's girls like Eileen Perez that is, winning fights and getting a lot of fanfare, whatever reason. Norma Dumont is winning fights, looking really good. Getting fanfare for maybe some other reasons. Irina Aldana, she's always in there to have a good fight. Macy Chasen, she's always showing up to have a good fight.
Carol Hosa's fun.
Carol Hosa has been like kicking ass and being violent. GDR, there's
hope. There's hope, because
here.
Yeah, and I'm 100% with you.
It feels like this.
No, for the first time, it feels like women's bantamweight looks like it's kind of fun, because for the longest time, and I don't want to blame Amanda Nunes because, as far as women's bantamweight champions, well, probably just women in MMA in general, she's probably the GOAT. But there was just so little excitement in the division, in part because it just felt like, okay, she's there. Who next victim up, and at this point, it feels like, oh wow, there's actually some movement here, but we're going to get into what the part that really excites us in a little bit, but yeah, for the first time in a little while, I actually have an eye on women's bantamweight as something that, there's actually something fun going on here. I'm not saying it's the best division. It's probably still the worst division in the UFC, but it's kind of fun to look at this point.
And for me, it's more of Aileen Perez's after fight tactics that have me interested in the women's bantamweight division. Those videos with Merab are hilarious, by the way. I'm sure you've
that is
seen
true.
them.
That is true. Yes, I did see that.
She's letting it happen. He's happy to oblige. I'm happy for them. This division again, though, is like, and the fights aren't bad. Like we're kind of getting through the slog, and we forgot like Mayra Buena Silva even.
That's true.
We're getting through the slog of these like kind of, and I feel bad for saying this, but like women's bantamweight is really starting to get rid of the Rocky Pennington MO, because that was Holly Holm's MO: swing, hold you against the cage, swing and cling against the cage, control you against the cage, dirty box a little bit, control this fight and win this fight. But we've got girls like Norma Dumont that are like becoming good counter punchers. We've got girls like Aileen Perez that are like good, dangerous topside grapplers. Carol Hossa, who's just like a violent striker with like a good leg kicking game. We got Kayla Harrison, who is a, lights out submission grappler. We've got fighters that are, Macy Chiasson, who is just a pretty well-rounded fighter that can finish. Like, not only do we have like women fighters that are kind of becoming violent, but they're finishing fights. And even if they're not finishing fights, look at Irina Aldana's head from a couple of weeks ago in the Sphere. That was a women's bantamweight fight. It looks cool. It's been fun.
The other thing that I want to throw out there with regards to that too, Rousey debuted in the UFC in 2013. Yeah, 2013. So that's close to 12 years ago now. It'll be 12 years in February. I think that there's some names that we aren't aware of yet that will be coming up because, who was it that she was largely influencing? Preteen girls or early young teen girls, stuff like that. And so I think that we're about to start seeing the real fruits of that. I mean, I know that a lot of the women in the UFC at this point were influenced by Ronda, but I think that her influence was at its strongest with that crowd of girls. So I think that there's quite a few names that we're not aware of that in the next few years should be propping up, and in all divisions, which obviously would benefit the women's bantamweight division too.
Another thing too that I, as you're saying that, it's kind of got my wheels spinning, is like how many young women are, between 22 and 30 years old at flyweight. When they hit 35 and 36 and 37, there's going to be room for them on the roster up a division. Like Valentina Shevchenko is like one phone call away for fighting for a women's bantamweight title. Because that could also very much happen. And that's not, and then you look at, Manon Fiorot, like how much longer is she making cuts to 125? Is she going to be an MMA fighter for 5 more years? Probably. Is she going to cut to 125 for 5 more years? Probably not. Would she fare well at bantamweight? Probably. So there's all of that, and there's tons of young girls, tons and tons of young girls that are just, Natalia Silva, she's like in her late 20s. Like, is she going to finish her career as a women's flyweight?
She's got the frame to handle bantamweight, I think. So yeah, I'm with you on that.
And there's tons of movers and shifters. Can't believe I'm saying this on Check the Kick podcast. Women's bantamweight is kind of getting interesting.
Agreed.
And I care about it just a little bit more than I ever have in the past. Moving on to the final segment of the show, and with the new, we have UFC Salt Lake City, another pay-per-view coming up. It's in your backyard. some pretty cool fights on this card. I wish we had more time allotted to talk about more of them. But we're going to go right back into women's bantamweight. We have the biggest favorite on the card, Kayla Harrison, taking on Ketlen Vieira. Kayla Harrison, I only looked at her odds and I just saw them and assumed that she's the heaviest favorite on the card. So let me not speak too crazy, but yeah, no, she looks like she's the biggest favorite. She's a minus 800. Ketlen Vieira is coming back at plus 550.
I'm not surprised.
I'm not surprised at all. Tell me who you think's going to win this fight. Tell me how. Tell me why. If you're like me, I think we're both on the same page here.
Oh, 100%. The only reason why there was any question about Kayla Harrison at UFC 300 against Holly Holm was how would she look after the weight cut, because she had never cut down to 135 before. We've seen her at 135 now, and she's I can't even put together words to describe how she just eviscerated Holm in that fight. That was one of the most one-sided beatdowns in high-level MMA that I have ever seen. And Vieira fought a very tooth-and-nail fight with Holm a couple of years ago. That, it was one of those fights that could have gone either way. And I know that MMA math does not add up correctly. I 100% get that. But while I do believe that Vieira has improved some since then and Holm has fallen off a little bit more, I still don't think that this is going to be much of a contest, in large part because Harrison is going to be making the cut again. I think she's going to be more comfortable with it. I anticipate that she'll just be looking to get a read for the first little bit before she decides she's done playing with her food, and she'll get a finish either late in the first round or early in the second, something like that. I think this is going to be one-sided, but even though I don't particularly think it's going to be a close contest, I'm excited to sell for it just because I think Kayla Harrison is the biggest reason to be having some sort of hope for the bantamweight division right now.
I agree. I could just say that's it. You nailed it. Because I want to say everything you just said. Kayla Harrison's really, really good. I think Ketlen Vieira is a pretty good fighter. She's highly ranked in the division. She's definitely elite compared to, the rest of her colleagues at women's bantamweight. However, I just think Kayla Harrison just built different, dude. Like, You go and you look at Ketlen Vieira's record and it looks good. She's got a nice record. She's 14-3. Her only loss and her last loss was Raquel Pennington via split decision. Some people thought she won that fight. Prior to that, her other loss was Yana Santos in 2021. And then before that, she did have that pretty violent knockout brawling in the pocket with Aldana. That put Aldana on the map, but that was 5 years ago. That was back in 2019. When you really break down the fight tape and you're just not on Sherdog.com, looking at their records, Ketlen Vieira is a slow, lumbering, slow-footed fighter.
Yep.
She's got decent boxing and she's got decent BJJ, but Kayla Harrison is much quicker. Kayla Harrison's going to be stronger. She's got really good entries. Kayla Harrison has all different types of takedowns that she can do. She's a judo specialist, so those body lock trip takedowns are going to be there. And even if someone, Holly Holm did have one moment. She did take down Kayla Harrison. She got a really nice sweep takedown on her.
True.
And even Harrison was like, that was great. I was surprised by that. Didn't expect her to do that. However, that only brought her into Kayla Harrison's realm, and Kayla Harrison went out there to proceed to shit kick Holly Holm. And I just think it's going to look the same for Ketlen Vieira. I don't think Ketlen Vieira has the foot speed or the athleticism to keep up with Kayla Harrison there. And then technically, when they're both on the mat, Ketlen Vieira is a high-level BJJ practitioner, but Kayla Harrison's just built different.
Yeah,
she's BJJ black belt level sub game with Olympic level jiu-jitsu, and not just one Olympic, not just two, 4.
Yeah.
So she's just built different. And you look at her one loss to Larissa Pacheco. That was the third time they fought. She had beat Pacheco twice, and Pacheco literally had to do a lot of things to her body. There's even speculation that she's done things to her body to really get herself to that point. But if you look at her, Larissa Pacheco went through hell. She, transformed her whole body to get a close decision win against Kayla Harrison. Harrison's down at 135. This is where, it's where she should have always been, in my opinion. Sucks that the timelines didn't. I think Kayla Harrison thought the PFL was going to be a lot bigger of an organization than they ended up being. And I think after she served her time there, she, saw the probably what was coming up in the horizon and wanted out. And I don't blame her. Don't blame her at all. I think this is a great place for her to be. And I also think this test was more of this fight, is more of a test to prove it that you can win this fight and prove it that you can make 135.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I was kind of bummed that they actually didn't put her into a title fight immediately after just decimating Holm, but I get why they didn't. Doesn't mean that I can't disagree, but yeah. So
it's Kayla Harrison for me. How do you got? I first round sub.
Yeah, I'll go a little bit differently. Second round TKO. Just she's going to get a finish one way or the other. I feel very confident about.
I'm right there with you. I'm going to be really surprised if Ketlen Vieira has the athleticism to keep up. Moving on to what is now the co-main event. Unfortunately, we did lose Aljamain Sterling and Movsar Evloev. Was Aljo injured? Was it strategic? I don't know, but we got probably an even better fight, in my opinion. We have the King of Rio. He's back again. He had a short-term retirement, but Jose Aldo's back. He's taking on Mario Bautista in my opinion, the most exciting division in MMA. Odds on this fight, they're close, very close odds. Jose Aldo he's a slight dog here. Mario Bautista is a minus 135 favorite. Jose Aldo is a plus 115 dog. Super close fight here. This should be fucking cool. This should be violent. Tell me what you think of Jose Aldo at this stage of the career, 38 years old, down a division. Will he win this fight? Will Mario Bautista win? Tell me what you think.
Ooh, this one is not an easy fight to pick. Bautista's up and coming. I think he's starting to hit his stride. He had a couple of rough patches early. He was one of them that fell to Trevin Jones, if I'm not mistaken, and that weird ass fluke of a run that Jones had. But anyway,
just like knocked out 3 people like super randomly and like beat like Timur Valiev and shit. It was super weird. Like,
yeah, no, and then just it faded back into obscurity. Yeah, but he beat some good guys. But yeah, that was really weird. But anyway, I've liked Bautista since he came in. I thought he got a really rough hand when he drew Corey Sandhagen in his debut. Because we've all seen what Sandhagen has done since then. But Bautista's got a lot of talent. I think that he's somebody who probably will be hanging around the top 15 for about the next 5 years or so, which, that's a good chunk of time. Whether or not he can make himself known within the top 10, I don't know. He's got the ability, but there's a lot of guys who have the ability that never get there either. So, and then it's Aldo. This guy is one of the goats. He's not on everybody's Mount Rushmore, but he's somebody that everybody at least considers to have their spot on the MMA Mount Rushmore with good reason. And I think that he's only adding to his legacy after having dropped to bantamweight when we all thought that was a stupid idea. But he's proven us all wrong. He got his nutrition in line, and he looks absolutely fantastic at 135 to the point where it's like, oh wow, why didn't he do this years ago? And the thing that really is a big hang up for me, because at 301, when Aldo came back from his temporary retirement, I picked Martinez because I thought, okay, Aldo's older at this point. I think he was 37 for that fight.
I did too, by the way. I did pick against Jose Aldo. I thought he wanted payday at home.
Exactly. And that was my thoughts as well. But he came out and he looked like he hadn't taken a day off. He looked like he was still in his prime. And maybe that was him feeding off of the Brazil crowd. He's one of those that I think really takes in their energy when he's in front of them. But at the same time, he looked great in his fights prior to running into Merab. You know, he pieced up Pedro Munoz, he pieced up Rob Font, and it's very possible that he has lost a half a step since then. I'm not going to say a full step. I'll say a half a step. And that might be the difference that Bautista needs to be able to overcome him. But at this point, I don't feel like I can pick against Aldo. He's a legend. He looked fantastic against Martinez, and I don't know how Bautista is gonna feel looking across the cage at a legend. Is he going to be in shock and awe of him the way that Martinez was? I don't know, but I'm going with Aldo.
Aldo is a guy that I've never been a Jose Aldo guy, and my entrance into watching MMA was when I was a kid. I would watch Spike TV and I would watch WEC on Spike TV. I would watch that, and then right after that, the Man Show would come on, right? And that was like my entrance into MMA. Like I started watching MMA in like 2004. Time flies, but I remember watching Jose Aldo on WEC, and then I remember watching the WEC dismantle, and I was a little bit butthurt, and then everything went the way it did with the UFC, and I was happy again. Jose Aldo is a guy that he's kind of good at everything. Like if his first fight in this division was against Marlon Moraes, and that was not like the Marlon Moraes that all these new fans only remember. Like this was Marlon Moraes, like fucking Merkin dudes, like very good, like WSF, like World Series of Fighting champion level Marlon Moraes. Like he was very good, and he lost a split decision that a lot of people thought he won. His fight after that with Petrian was, I mean, Petrian beat the brakes off of him, like really bad.
Aldo looked decent for the first 2 rounds.
He looked great for the first 2 rounds, and and the third round it ended up getting pretty bad for Aldo, and Petrian does.
No, you're right. That was an all-time beatdown. I'm not saying you're wrong with that. Just,
no,
he looked good those first couple of rounds,
and he always does. He's always like, and in 3-round fights, Jose Aldo's gonna be an MFer to deal with, because if you don't do what Conor McGregor did to him, then you better either be Max Holloway or Alexander
or Merab.
And Merab couldn't take him down. He can only say, "Hey, I can only hold." He fought him like a women's bantamweight. And when you go to Sherdog.com and you look at Jose Aldo's really long stretch of wins, I mean, he lost in 2005, and he won every single fight he was in until he was matched up with Conor McGregor 10 years later. He had not lost a fight in 10 years, over 2 organizations, champions in 2 organizations. Once he lost to Conor McGregor, he came back, he beat Frankie Edgar, and then he dropped those 2 fights against Max Holloway. And after that, I was kind of like, maybe he's done. But then he knocked out Jeremy Stephens, and he knocked out a guy we talked about earlier in the show, Moicano. Then he went on a 3-fight losing streak where he lost to Volk, lost to Marlon Moraes, got beat down by Petrian. Then he came back and went on that run, won 3 fights in a row, like you spoke about. Then he lost to Merab. Then he's back again against Jonathan Martinez. And I'm like, this guy's been through way too much shit. He's like the dog that gets taken to the pound, finds a home, lives there for a while, does pretty well, nips out a little kid, they bring him back. And then he finds another, like he's just, at some point you're like, this, he's going to run out of time here. But no, he seems to be inevitable. He is 38 years old. So this, the train could fall off the tracks, but if it falls off the tracks, it's going to be like that train that crashed in Ohio last year with the nuclear spill. Like it's going to be bad when the train falls off the tracks. But when I look at Mario Bautista, like he looked really good against Ricky Simon. His striking looked great. He seems very technical. He's training out of the same camp as Sean O'Malley. He's got Sean O'Malley, what's his name, Marcus McGee. Like, there's tons of really good bantamweights at that camp. Prior to beating Ricky Simone, he beat Damon Blackshear. I think Blackshear is a really good fighter too. So he's coming off of some really good wins. But in a 3-round fight, I don't know if his Bautista is going to be able to get any sort of wrestling off, and he's just going to be in a striking match against Jose Aldo. Yeah, he's 38, but the way he just shut down Jonathan Martinez's game, I expect him to kind of do the same thing again here. Checks the kicks, more power, more diverse boxing. Mario Bautista does have some really slick and tricky angles he can hit, and he is fast-footed, and he is very well-schooled, and he is getting better. But, man, it's fucking Jose Aldo. I'm picking Jose Aldo to win 2 of 3 rounds, and I wouldn't be surprised if Bautista wins the 3rd round here or wins the 1st round and Jose Aldo makes a comeback. He's a veteran, and until Jose Aldo is fighting dudes at the top of the division and title fight level, it's going to be hard for me to pick against him. I got Jose Aldo by decision. We made it. Main event, UFC Salt Lake City. We have Alex Poatan Pereira taking on Khalil Rountree. A fight that some people say shouldn't happen, but I'm actually perfectly fine with it. Odds on this fight are... Alex Pereira is a pretty hefty favorite. He's a minus 520. I think he's the 2nd biggest favorite on the card, which is kind of interesting. Khalil Rountree is an underdog. He's coming at plus 390 is the best number I can find him at here. Very interesting fight from, if you've told me 5 years ago that Alex Pereira and Khalil Rountree were fighting for the, when Jan Blachowicz was knocking out Dominic Reyes, if you told me these dudes were fighting for the title, I might have called you crazy.
Well, that was around the time when Kudalaba just manhandled Rountree, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. So, I never would have guessed that.
But here we are. Cool main event. Like, remove the rankings and the the odds of this fight, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, these dudes are set up to have a good scrap. Tell me who you think's going to win. Tell me how. And what do you think of these odds? Pretty freaking heavy.
They're heavy odds, but I actually, if I knew that Pereira was going to be a heavy favorite, and if you would put a gun to my head and asked me to guess, I actually would have guessed he would have been a heavier favorite. I was thinking, okay, maybe minus 650 or something like that. So the fact that they're heavy is appropriate. That's not to say that Rountree doesn't have a chance. He is one of the hardest hitters in the sport. Like, there are very few that have a cleaner technique than Rountree, and he's got the natural power to go along with that technique to just put somebody lights out just like that. And he's done it several times as well. And he seems to be putting it together as well. For a long time, he was a guy who was toying with the unemployment line quite frequently. It felt like the UFC gave him a little bit longer of a leash due to the fact that he is a fun fighter to watch, kind of along the lines of kill or be killed. Not that he necessarily hasn't quit either. He's had some other fights where he's been taken down time after time, and his wrestling sucks, but he's willing to keep getting back up, which is a lot more than some other fighters can say. So he's got a dog in him, and he's putting together a momentous run, not swing. And I thought that he probably needed one more fight to get to a title fight. Part of the reason why it's so controversial that he's getting this fight is he popped for PEDs earlier this year, and it was proven that it was a tainted supplement. It doesn't look like he was trying to cheat, but still, people think that you shouldn't be rewarded for popping, even if it was accidental with a title fight. I understand that argument. But at the same time, I'll say this is what we've got. This is, might as well enjoy it because it should be a lot of fun. So he's got the possibility to deliver a one-hitter quitter on Pereira. Do I think that he can, though? Do I think that he will? He can, but I don't think he will. Pereira he's becoming a force of nature at this point. He's got a deadly silent confidence about him. That at the same time there's humbleness mixed in with him. You sent me a quote that he had told his coach Glover Teixeira earlier today, saying that basically that he's finally starting to figure out this game. And given the fact that he's
crazy because he's held the belt in two divisions.
Yes.
And he's finally starting to understand the MMA game.
Yeah. No, that's a scary thing to think, and that also means that he's willing to learn. Obviously, he's got to be willing to learn to be able to go from where he was at to where he's at now, because I can't think of anybody who's had a quicker rise from basically 4 professional fights when he was signed to the UFC to now a 2-division champion. Son of a bitch. That's incredible. Like, the type of people who did that were the ones back in the day when Randy Couture was debuting in the late 90s and stuff like that. That doesn't happen in modern day MMA.
And it's not like it's not like an Olympic wrestler just pulled up with this crazy, smothering game. Like, no, he's out here like leaving a trail of bodies behind him.
He's fun to watch, yeah.
And what I think is even crazier is we were just talking about a high level, practitioner in Kayla Harrison, who has been a champion in in judo and has been a world champion in another organization. But like, to me, like, is Kayla Harrison getting any better at MMA at this point? Like, maybe little tiny things here and there, but like
incremental.
Alex has seemed to have gotten like significantly better at MMA, which is just really cool to watch. Like, he seems to be a student of the game. Yeah, he got his black belt for knocking out Jamal Hill, which is just awesome and
that's
funny.
Pure MMA.
It's the most MMA thing in the world. Like,
exactly. I mean, the roots of this sport are Vitor Belfort knocking out his opponents and then yelling "Jiu-Jitsu, Jiu-Jitsu!" Yeah,
with this demonic hand speed on pounds of steroids. Alex is just he's just like been a breath of fresh air. The dude can't do anything wrong. Like, he's the way he's recovered and turned his career around after getting knocked out by Izzy in their 4th fight against each other, to move up a division and beat the dude that kind of schooled Izzy in Jan Blachowicz. And it's honestly Alex's hardest fight still to the day in this division at 205. Was his intro into the division against Jan Blachowicz, but he went and he got that Medal of Honor, added that little badge to his vest, and it's been freaking kicking ass and taking names ever since. Khalil Rountree is a dude that's, I never saw him as a title challenger. I never saw him as a threat. He was beaten in close fights against dudes like Dustin Jacoby, where I'm like, did he win? And then you look at Khalil Rountree and you look at, he is the glory killer. Look what he's done to dudes like Gokhan Saki, Carl Roberson. Khalil Rountree is a finisher, but he's also one of the more violent dudes. Like, if you're hurt in front of Khalil Rountree, he spared Anthony Smith's life, but go look at, if you get hurt in front of Khalil Rountree, his hammer fist, his ground and pound, like, he will be standing over your half unconscious body, hitting you with the most violent hammer fist body kicks. One thing I appreciate about Khalil Rountree's game is he understands the importance of damage and violence. He's got that same bit of Steve Garcia in him where, like, for me to win fights, I just got to be fucking violent. And he gets it. Like, that finishing sequence, like, if you're like turtled on the ground in front of him, he's just going to fucking soccer kick you in the ribs. Yeah. I love that shit. I think that's awesome.
That's one of those things that I don't think enough fighters utilize, is the kicks to the ribs. But, whenever I think of somebody who has utilized that, Rountree's always the first name that comes to mind with that.
His willingness for just like effing violence is what the fans should appreciate. So, like, if you're one of those, and I used the term curmudgeon earlier, but I'll use it again. But if you're one of those old curmudgeons that are like, Khalil Rountree doesn't deserve a title fight. Okay, well, if that's your excuse, you want it to be Magomed Ankalaev. Khalil Rountree and Alex Pereira are going to put on a more interesting and more fun fight than Magomed Ankalaev and Alex Pereira, because we know what's going to happen. And the UFC understands that too. And what's funny is you said, when you're kind of breaking it down a little bit there, you said that the biggest issue was Khalil Rountree's PED test failure, and my biggest issue is just Magomed Ankalaev existing. So it's funny because there's just two different sides. Where like I just the PED thing, whatever. There's no use out anyway. So it's funny. Like
we've noticed.
Shout out to Court McGee and Tim Means. Maybe they'll use that to their advantage this week. Or maybe OSP will.
He may have already, if we're being honest.
It's just with Khalil Rountree, what he does good is, again, understanding the need of violence. He's a really technical kickboxer. He's got good Muay Thai. We know this. He's, after he got knocked out in the clinch by Johnny Walker, he went to Thailand for a little bit, came back, and the way he looked against Eric Anders was fucking awesome.
We've been talking about brutal beatdowns. That was one of the worst, one of the most one-sided fights I can remember.
And then the way that he hyperextended Modestas Bakauskas, like that's what I mean about Khalil Rountree. Like he's like, oh, if this is a little moment for me to be real violent, like violence equals fights being over. I'm gonna stomp on your knee. You're gonna plant your foot in front of me, and I'm just gonna stomp your knee in.
And you don't get that feel from him in his interviews out of the cage or anything like that. He comes across as a really nice, humble guy, and then you see the shit that he does in the cage, and it's just like, wow, where did this come from?
One thing I do that he really does as well is his boxing. He will change his hand speed. So he will throw a punch at 50% speed and 50% power. He'll throw some shots to get you to cover up, and then he'll whip a hook around the guard and he'll nail someone behind the ear. That's kind of how he started his finishing sequence against Carl Roberson. Anthony Smith changed the speed and then sneak an uppercut in there really fast and freaking snap Anthony Smith's head back. What worries me about Khalil Rountree, if I were to be picking him in the fight, is the fact that it took him 3 rounds to get there with Alex Pereira. And Anthony Smith had some offensive moments with the striking there. And Khalil Rountree is not the most durable dude. And you know what? Shout out to Alex Pereira fighting the way he does, because he's not the most durable dude either. No. But in this division, with the power that he has, the technical game he has, Khalil Rountree is very light on the front foot. He's ready to check leg kicks. I'm not sure it's going to matter against Alex Pereira. I think he's going to kick his legs to bits. And then as soon as Khalil Rountree does not want to hang out at cooking range anymore, he's going to force a blitz out of him, and he's probably just going to counterpunch him with something. It's probably going to look semi-similar to the first Yuri Prochazka fight, where he is under fire and he just sneaks in a tight hook and drops him, because Alex Pereira is he's got like a C4 in his hands and his legs, and he needs this much to throw a punch.
You've got the H-bomb with Hendo, and then you've got Alex Pereira's left hook. Like, that would be the most lethal combination in the history of the sport. If somebody had each of those, just that left hook from Pereira is out of this world. You hear Keith talk about how incredible it is all the time, but no matter how much Keith slobbers about it, it's not doing it justice. Just Alex Pereira's left hand is equivalent to the H-bomb, and he's been able to do that in such a short time within this sport. It's fucking nuts. I mean, he is a former world champion kickboxer as well, and he knows all these little tricks of the trade that MMA fighters aren't quite as familiar with, and he's been able to use them to his advantage. Just slight pivots here, or I'm not the best with the X's and O's in terms of that, but I'm able to catch small things when I go back and watch film with Pereira, and it's always just something subtle. And I think it's going to be something like that he catches Rountree with. I mean, you're not wrong. Roundtree's not an idiot on the feet by any means, and he's got the power to be able to put Pereira's lights out.
If he punches easily with Alex and he clubs him, I mean, this is a fight where, Khalil could hurt Alex at any point in this fight.
He could, but I think that Pereira is very well aware of the danger that Rountree poses. And I think that he's going to use his range, because, only God knows how Pereira was ever able to get down to 185 in the first place, because
And he
that
wants
guy
to
is
do
a
it
monster
again.
of a human being. I don't want him to. I don't want to see him fight Dreykus.
What the fuck is wrong with
Stay
this
at light
guy?
heavyweight. Yeah, no,
Like-
stay there.
Like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah, no, don't do that, buddy.
You know, Glover and Polino, his coach, are like, dude,
Stop.
like, just shut
Yeah,
up. Like,
yeah. So I think that he's going to use his range and just use his technical prowess to kind of to pick apart Rountree, you know. And I think that there might be some nip and tuck, but I think Pereira is going to be able to find an opening sooner than Rountree. And if I can guarantee one thing, it's this fight is not going all 5 rounds.
no. What worries me is the Salt Lake City slight elevation that, I mean, we have some here too, where I'm located. But Salt Lake City, there is a slight elevation, and he did not look the best against Jan Blachowicz. And Jan Blachowicz, he fought him in Salt Lake City. So that is my only concern. However, it is Alex Pereira. He's such a student of the game too. Like, you see so much striking footage of him, but you see a ton of grappling footage of him too. Like, he's in Teixeira MMA. He's cutting his teeth. Like, he is not a dude. He's humble. He's willing to train with anybody. He wants to train with John Jones. He's all this training with Sean Strickland. He's a guy that is not scared to go and get good work in from good dudes. He just had a sit down with Anthony Smith where they, buried the hatchet, and they're like, maybe we could, he's
Yeah.
He seems like a really humble guy that's willing to just continuously learn. And when you've got that, learning mindset and that mindset to just want to continue to grow, even though he's 37, and playing speed chess as a world champion and the biggest star in the organization may catch up to him. I just don't think Khalil Rountree is going to be the one to do it. I think he knocks him out in the first round.
No. Quick note with regards to that, though, you were talking about his willingness to become a grappler as well. If he's going to test that, Rountree is the guy to test it on.
Perfect guy, because Khalil Rountree's never shot a takedown in his life, and he kind of has a little bit of sus wrestling. Khalil and his coach came out and said, we're not wrestling at all. We don't plan to shoot a single takedown. I don't know what that means anymore. I told you I'm not a big stats guy, because stats don't win you fights. But at the same time, I've mentioned stats multiple times in the show, and the stats show that Khalil Rountree's never shot a takedown, and he said he wasn't going to do it. So I'm inclined to believe him. But if he ends up feeling a little woozy because he gets touched by something, he's shooting a takedown.
I think it would be a mistake. I remember how the first fight with Prohaska ended. He was kind of in that position, and he's just pounded. Yeah, if Rountree shoots and he doesn't get it, I think Pereira is going to do whatever the hell he wants with him from there. So I believe him when he says they're not going to shoot for takedowns. We'll see. There's a reason why we watch the fights. Yeah,
this is going to be a fun fight, and this card is littered. This card is littered with good fights. We got Wonder Boy.
Yes.
Versus Joaquin Buckley on here. Just there's plenty of good fights. Go look through the under.
Marina Rodriguez and what's her name? Yasmin Lucindo. I think that's an underrated fight.
Freaking Delidze versus Kevin Holland's on here.
Yeah.
Even Austin Hubbard and Alexander Hernandez, like, that should be a scrap. And then we have the returning OSP and Ryan Spann after their bout that got canceled. They'll be back.
And former champion Esparza's retirement fight rematch against Tisha Pennington.
Wow. Tons of really cool fights on the card. Thank you guys so much for listening and tuning in. Thank you so much for joining me, Dane. I really appreciate it. That's the show, guys. Sherdog.com. More fights coming up, more shows coming up. Thank you so much for tuning in, and enjoy.